Hello. Well, there are several reasons for the break between my last video and this, but most of them have to do with the fact that I lost my voice. And when I found it again, I discovered that it thought it was someone else. Frankly, I found my own voice irritating enough, but I didn't much care for being someone else who swallowed a rusty door hinge. Then I finally got to the doctor, who gave me some miracle medicine. This, because it had turned into a chest infection. And modern pharmaceuticals at their best. I can breathe. Oh, wow, is that nice. Atrovent, it's called, made by a company based in Ingelheim, which is in Germany, by the way. And one of the medicines, no doubt, that the Remainers are trying to tell me won't be available if we leave the European Union. Yeah, like a pharmaceutical company is going to pass up the opportunity to sell medicines to the National Health Service. Oh, yeah. And I'm also following the advice, thank you very much, given to me under my last video about oregano oil, and I'm taking that too. It makes me feel like I've just eaten a giant pizza. And I'm not too keen on pizza, but it's a small price to pay for getting rid of whatever has been ailing me up to now, whatever it is. I believe that the Britisher came down with something very similar. I have to say, my disposition was not helped by staying up until 1 a.m, watching Parliament ripping itself to shreds as Boris Johnson made one last attempt to get an election set up, and he was defeated by the forces of evil. Am I being hyperbolic? I don't think so. Because my definition of evil is lying to people. Well, there are other things you can do that's evil, but lying straight in their faces is comes pretty near the top of the list. I know there are MPs who, as a matter of conscience, think the EU is a good thing. And I suppose they tried to convince themselves that they were simply sticking to their principles. But I disagree with that, because their first principle is that if the British people decide something, then they have to execute that decision. And they weren't doing that. Now, one comment under one of my videos made the very valid point that if it had been left to the popular vote, then the people would have voted for the death penalty. I'm not too sure about that. Many people do support the idea of a death penalty, including Peter Hitchens, and I think I'll make another video about that. So I'll get back to him another time. But if there was a vote on the death penalty, now if is a word meaning speculation, and speculation is not reality. The British people were not given a vote on the death penalty, so that argument falls right there. We didn't have a referendum on it. However, in any case, it isn't the same argument. First of all, for those of you who don't know, the death penalty was in effect revoked in the United Kingdom in 1965 under a Labour government. The Labour government had been elected the year before in 1964, and during their election, they had nothing, absolutely nothing in their election manifesto about the death penalty one way or the other. Neither had the Conservatives, because it wasn't really an issue. The only demonstrations you saw around that subject would be the groups who gathered outside a prison on the night before an execution was scheduled, holding a vigil for the condemned. There was a substantial movement against the death penalty in Britain, and getting British people out on a cold night to stand all night outside a prison shows that their feelings were pretty strong on that subject. Furthermore, although you might get some people who believe that a death penalty is required, I'd be willing to bet that you wouldn't get 17.5 million people out in the streets demanding that. Well, not until we've got a Muslim majority here anyway. So that's the first thing. No parliament in Britain has ever been elected on the promise that they would either institute or revoke a death penalty. And that is the important thing. If a set of MPs are elected on the basis of their party manifesto, and that manifesto says A, then any principle they have would have to be subordinate to the promises which the manifestos gave to the voting public, and they would have to vote for A. As for the old death penalty, I have to add that when abolition was suggested in 1964, 1965, there were no mass demonstrations, and that was a trial period. They could have had some demonstrations. The bill wasn't actually made finalised, until 1969. And in all that time, there was no unrest about it, and this lack of enthusiasm persisted even through the times when a few years later, not much longer after that, the Irish Republican Army was setting bombs in English pubs and shopping centres. So although the contention was from that commenter that most people would have voted for a death penalty, I'm not so sure. And in any case, it's still only guesswork. We don't really know because no one has tested it. However, we really, really do know what the people want now with regard to the EU membership of the United Kingdom, don't we? 17.5 million voters. It's a bloody amazing figure by British standards of voting. And people came out to vote who'd never voted before in their entire lives. At the same time, most of the MPs assured their constituents categorically that they would execute their wishes for or against, depending on the outcome of the referendum. So this isn't a matter of just the will of the people. It's a matter of voters, the people, being lied to by their own chosen representatives. And so any side issues about what the British people would have voted for at another time, or whether Parliament knows better than the people what the people want, all of these are totally irrelevant. The fact is the people were given a specific choice, and the representatives said they would carry out that choice, and now they're refusing to do it. And this is an issue which is now going on in France, and it's sort of going on in America as well. And it seems to be going on all over the world. Well, in many places, well, you've got Hong Kong, all around the world. There are situations where we as planetary citizens, we are starting to have a conversation about who is actually in charge. And this has never happened before. Not that sort of thing all the way round. And maybe we should start to think globally like that. I know the word global has got a bit of a bad reputation, but it is. Because of global communications, it has now become a global issue. And whatever happens in one country will leak through to other countries. So it's very important that Britain does what it's supposed to do here, because everybody is watching and learning and taking notes. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.